I'm sure you've read Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God, right? And it's that cozy, comfortable kind of verse. And in most Christian circles, it's the kind of verse we claim as our life verse. It's the kind of verse we put on a bumper sticker. It's the kind of verse we put stenciled somewhere in our house. And it's the kind of verse that we crochet on a pillow, right? Or we cross stitch on a pillow, right? It's the kind of verse that brings us comfort, brings us peace, and sort of that calming effect, right? And for most Christians, that's what it is. And that's all it is. It's that permission to be able to stop, be still, and just know that, you know what, maybe I don't have to worry about things as much. And maybe I can just have permission to stop and rest. And after all, that's not entirely wrong, because after all, we as Christians are called to rest. We're called to take a Sabbath. We're called to rely on God. God commands us to rest and relax and just honestly just not stress out over every little thing. And there's a ton of truth to that. But sometimes, with these verses, it's almost like we don't go deep enough into our theology. It's almost like we don't go deep enough into what the verse could actually mean. And I remember as a teacher, one of the things that I used to love telling students was that context is king. And the only way we're truly going to understand what Scripture says is if we truly understand the context of what a particular verse is inside, right? You can't take one verse and make an entire theological, basis out of it, right? And so I want to take a minute today and I want to talk a little bit about Psalm 46. And what's interesting about Psalm 46 is it's actually a song of the sons of Korah. Okay, so I want you to put this in a little bit of context, okay, is that you had the sons of Korah. Now, if you remember Korah's rebellion, Korah rebelled against Moses and, brought a bunch of people with him and were like, Moses, you suck. We don't like you. We don't like what you're doing. We don't like how you're doing it. We can do it better. And there was a rebellion. And Moses is like, all right, well, if I'm wrong and you're right, then I'm going to be struck down. But if I'm right and you're wrong, may the earth be opened up and you get swallowed. And that is precisely what happened, right? The earth opened up and swallowed the entire rebellion, and that was it. It was over, just like that. God put that down so fast that he was like, this isn't happening. And so the sons of Korah, maybe they saw this happen, maybe they didn't, and maybe they're not direct sons, maybe they're more descendants. We don't actually know. But theologically speaking, the story would have gotten passed down and they would have known. And here they are in a fully trust God moment, okay, where they say, God is our refuge and strength, a helper who is always found in times of trouble. Therefore, we won't be afraid, though the earth trembles and the mountains topple into the depths of the seas, though its water roars and foams, and the mountains quake with its turmoil, right? And he goes on in verse 8, come and see the works of the Lord who brings devastation on the earth, and he makes wars cease throughout the earth. He shatters bows and cuts spears to pieces. He sets wagons ablaze. And then verse 10. Now, most of us read, be still and know that I am God. Now, the CSB version and a few other versions translate it, stop your fighting, stop striving, stop doing things, and know that I am God, exalted among the nations, exalted on the earth. That's precisely what the writers are getting at, is this idea of stop. And what's fascinating is that the context of Psalm 46 isn't about hammocks and candles and cozy coffee cups and sort of relaxing out in a nice day like it is out today. I'm standing on my balcony and it's super quiet, and that's super nice, right? It's different than that. It's a battle. It's a struggle. And it's about the sovereignty of God. Like that's it. Okay? And so what's fascinating is that phrases like, though the nations rage and the kingdoms are going to fall, sound less like poetry and more like eyewitness testimony. And so what it does is it actually provides us this incredible reminder that God is sovereign. God is in control. It's about what God is doing in the lives of us, the nation, all the stuff that's going on. It is God who is in control. So when we pull a verse out of context, and just put it on a pillow and make it sound real nice, like, oh, that's okay, be still, know that I am God, it actually softens its impact. It softens the edge of what the verse is actually about. And what's really interesting is that in Hebrew, that phrase, be still, is actually the Hebrew word rapha, and it's not about quiet time with your latte. Okay, it literally means to let go, to cease doing something, right? To stop striving, to stop fighting, to stop sort of battling under your own strength. It kind of means give up, like just stop. Like you just don't need to be doing something. Okay, it doesn't mean stop and relax. It means stop your nonsense. Give up trying to have control. So in this particular context, it's not an invitation to take a nap. It's a command to stop grasping for control. Stop waging our little tiny wars and stop acting like the outcome depends on us and what we can do and our ability to maybe control some kind of outcome. I'm not even sure. And I love this. It's a call to lay down our illusion of strength and recognize His. To lay down our illusion of strength and recognize His. God, Psalm 46 reminds us that amongst all the chaos that's going on in the world, whether it's around the world or just in your life, God is in control. He's got it. And we don't have control of it. We can only do our part. It's an old pastor friend of mine used to say, work like it depends on you, but pray like it depends on God. Because the only way anything's going to happen is if you do your part that God needs you to do, but part of your part is to pray and to depend and rely and entirely recognize that it is up to Him, that entire outcome. And nothing goes by, nothing gets done, nothing happens in this world without Him allowing that to happen. And so God's good theology, the kind of theology that we want to pull out of this verse, doesn't stop with just what's true about God, okay? Because that's a big part of it, right? That is theology, the study of God, right? Okay, so that makes sense. But it goes deeper than that, because it presses in to how we, as His followers, ought to respond. Because everything in theology depends on our response as His people. And so when you read something like, stop striving, stop fighting, stop trying to figure this all on your own and know that I am God. In other words, I have this, you don't. What then do we do? How then should we behave? How then should we respond to such an incredible, honestly, life-changing truth? Because if you think about it, right, to walk around and to wake up in the morning and recognize that you only have so much control. You only have so much to do. You can control what you eat for breakfast. You can control whether or not you go to work. You can control what you spend your money on. You can control some things, right? You can control how you react and how you respond to something or someone or whatever, right? You get to control all of those things. But what you can't control is the weight of the world and what's going on around you and how it impacts you. You have zero control over that, but God does. And God's orchestrating that for your good. So in light of His sovereignty, how then shall we live? We should stop striving. We should embrace weakness so His perfect power can shine. We can watch Him work miracles instead of manufacturing our own. We can rediscover hope in the cross and freedom in surrender. This whole idea of be still, to stop striving, to stop fighting, isn't about rest and relinquishment and refreshment and nourishment and all of those things. It's not about those things. It's not a verse for our throw pillow for sure. But what it is a rallying cry for a surrendered life lived fully for His glory. So the next time you look at Psalm 46:10, the next time you see it in somebody's house, you don't have to correct them. You don't have to give them a theological lesson. But I want you to look at that verse and I want you to remember what it actually is a reminder of God's sovereignty in your life and the rallying cry behind the life that we are called to live in Him and for Him.